Good Tuesday morning, everyone. Welcome to the Blue Water Climate Control Volquest.com podcast presented to you by our good friends at Blue Water Climate Control for all your HVAC needs. Check them out at bluewaterclimatecontrol.com, or you can check them out on Twitter at blueh2o_climate. Give them a buzz at 865-299-2290. You can book an appointment online. You can find out about all their services on their webpage and all they can do to help you for any of your HVAC needs, including financing. If you need a new unit, tune up for your unit, whatever your need is, they can take care of you with your heating and air system. That's Blue Water Climate Control. With Austin Price and Rob Lewis, I'm Brent Hubbs. Glad to have you along with us on this Tuesday. Guys, let's put a bow tie on the Vanderbilt win before we get moving in any other direction. It's obviously good to win, but for Tennessee, what stock do you take from the Vanderbilt win? What do you take from it at all?
I don't think you use the right analogy. First off, I think you're putting that second coat of lipstick on the pig. For Vanderbilt. Yeah, I think you did what you're supposed to do, Brent. I mean, you won the game. You had a couple of moments where there were head scratching moments where you're like, God, this is just bad football. But then there were other moments where I thought you could, look at it and go, Tennessee's got a pretty good little young player there. Or Tennessee, has some talent in this spot. So, I think it depends on how you look at the program right now. If you still hold out hope for Jeremy Pruitt and you look at it glass half full, you're looking at it, for some of the positives. If you're done and you're ready to move on to the next guy, then you look at it as it was just bad.
I mean, I look at it as, first of all, Brent, you've written it and we've all said it. Vanderbilt's not very good, but my biggest takeaway would be, one, they're still playing hard for their head coach. I think that's pretty apparent, and it has been, even, as all the outside noise has reached deafening levels at times. And, Tennessee's got some nice players in the freshman class. I thought we saw a little more of. Certainly, obviously Harrison is the guy you talk about the most. 14 of 18, still, no interceptions as a starter. I think the kid looks pretty good. And then, Jabari Small, he looks like a guy that should have gotten more work this year. D. Beckwith only got 2 chances, but, looked pretty good. And then defensively, Tamarion McDonald starts. He has some struggles, but the fact that he was a starter. Key Lawrence made a play. Tyler Barron, has already shown that he can play. I thought Cooper was a lot better in his second start. So, if you're wanting to find some positives, I would say, the freshman class that everybody thought was going to be pretty good does have some talent.
What do we make of the quarterback situation? And I'm not talking about what they should have done in the past, okay? But you got two sample sizes now with Harrison Bailey and JT Shrout, the Florida game, and then the Vanderbilt game. Obviously, the test is there's another test coming up with Texas A&M this weekend. But Rob, I'll start with you. What's your assessment of Tennessee at quarterback now that the Garantano era is over and it's these two guys that's the focus? I know they try to do some package things with Maurer, but it certainly seems like it's Harrison Bailey and JT Shrout for a battle in the spring with Caden Salter set to join them. What do you make of the quarterback room and the quarterback situation right now for Tennessee?
Man, if you could merge Bailey and Shrout, then I think you'd really have, put Shrout's arm with Bailey's head, and I think you'd have something. I'm really impressed with Harrison's mental acumen. He clearly grasps the offense. He knows, where to go with the ball. Just as importantly, he knows where not to go with it. I think the fact that he's been out there as much as he had these last 2 games and not just had one of those what'd you see there throws, says a lot about, just what he's got going on upstairs. And I think Shrout, you look at him, he deserves to play. The 2 touchdown throws that he made, those were big time throws. And one was a total touch pass to Velus Jones. That was a great throw. And the one to Jalen Hyatt was just a frozen rope. Hit him in stride, which allowed Jalen to, turn the Jets on. So, it's surprising to me that Bailey seems, further along mentally than Shrout does as far as having a grasp of the offense and just a feel for the game. But, Shrout, to me, deserves to play. And I think pretty obviously got something to work with there. If the kid can, just get away from making those, horrible decisions like we've seen a couple of times this year.
Problem is I think right or wrong or indifferent, Brent, I think the staff, those few mistakes that he's made, they almost magnified them on him. And I think that's part of the reason that, Harrison probably is a little further along mentally than JT is JT in his limited time here has gotten yanked, anytime he's done anything wrong. And so I think, that goes in the back of that kid's mind when he's playing. And, you're almost playing to not screw up instead of just going out there and playing free. And so that's kind of my takeaway is, JT's got all the arm talent in the world, but I think mentally he struggles with the fact that, am I one bad throw away from heading right back to the pine?
So what do you think they do this week?
I think you'll see them both. I think, Harrison starts. And I do think that if Harrison starts and he's playing well, it's going to be harder for them to move to JT, because I think that, in this game, I don't think they're, with the chance to try to, upset a team that could be in the playoffs and end the year, on a bang. I think they're going to be more apprehensive to, okay, we're going to force JT in right here. I think if Harrison comes out and he plays well early, it'll be harder for them to kind of go that route of playing two. But I think they go into it thinking they're going to play two again.
We did the Monday night chat last night, and obviously the questions about Jeremy Pruitt's future dominated the entire chat. That's all it seems to be on anyone's mind at this point in time. How does Tennessee manage this thing? How do you think Tennessee should have managed it? How will they manage it moving forward? What do you where do you think with signing day tomorrow, what do you think this thing should be, and where do you think it is right now in terms of just their PR management of it?
Well, I don't, Rob, you look at this and I don't think it's going to hurt them with anybody that's going to sign tomorrow. So I don't think they really have to do anything. I think in a different world, you're probably having to do stuff, but you're up against signing day, and it's not affected you to this point. I don't think it's going to affect you. So I don't think they really have to say anything. Like I said the last few weeks, let the season play out and see what happens. If they go out there and they get beat 50-7 Saturday, obviously that helps make your mind up in a lot of regards. But if they go out there and they were to pull off the shocker and win Saturday, which is something that they could do, this team's got talent again. I get why everybody holds no hope out for that. But at the same time, Tennessee's capable of winning the game Saturday. And if they went up there and they won the game Saturday, then obviously that makes your mind up as well. So let the season play out and see what happens.
Rob, you think this is a simple case that everything's not completely finalized yet on what they want to do? Is that the reason there's been no endorsement? Is that the reason Jeremy Pruitt, when asked about it on Monday, just kind of, we'll talk about it at the end of the year? Philip Fulmer on Volquest was not extremely 100% committal to everything. Do you think this is just a deal where everybody has just said, hey, as Austin said, let's play all the games and then we'll sit down and talk about it and see what Jeremy's plan is and see what Philip's plan is and go forward from there?
I mean, that's kind of how you have to read it, don't you think? I mean, I think it's the easiest thing in the world to do, to come out and make a statement if that's that you're bringing him back no matter what. No
offense to Blake or Rob, but I don't know what Jeremy was supposed to say there. I really don't. What's he supposed to say? He's talked to Coach Fulmer. Coach Fulmer, has led him to believe he's going to be fine. But, again, all it takes is the right person to decide, okay, enough. I'm coming in here. I'll pay it. We're going to make a move. It's like Auburn. Auburn walked up to Gus Malzahn and right before a team meeting and said, you're out. You can go tell your team you got 10 minutes. Again, anything's possible. So, I just don't know. I'm not sure what Jeremy was supposed to say on Monday. I really don't.
I completely agree with that. No doubt about it. My point is, if he's coming back, I agree with Brent that, I think you just have to assume that it's kind of up in the air, or otherwise, Philip can settle the entire fan base down with, a 30-second soundbite, and he hasn't done that.
Yeah, certainly that's not been the case. Let's talk a little bit of recruiting right quick. Austin, you mentioned that all this some of the speculation and talk doesn't seem to be affecting them in that way. What do you expect? I mean, it seems like, I don't want to say Wednesday's a dud. It's not a dud by any means, but it doesn't have a lot of. It doesn't seem to have a lot of drama, not just for Tennessee, but for a lot of people around the country. It seems like it's kind of all pretty settled at this point. I mean, is that how Wednesday feels to you?
Yeah, I mean, in a lot of ways. I mean, Terrence Lewis is going to announce on January 2nd. He's going to sign early, and you know how that works. I mean, that'd be 64 forecasts and future casts and crystal balls and all that stuff before now on January 2nd. And it'll be not a surprise as to where he signs. Still think Tennessee's in a good spot there. Would anything surprise me with this kid? No. But at the same time, he is someone that's had really good dialogue with Tennessee over the last 24 hours or so since things went south with Auburn. And it just makes sense that he would potentially get back in on this class. He's been committed for so long. I think Tennessee would really like to add another defensive tackle in this class. Makes a ton of sense to me. Tywan Malone is not going to sign in December. He will not sign until February. I think Tennessee would love to add another defensive tackle to this class. And then we'll see what they do with guys like Byron Young. I just think that this thing's got some twists and turns to it coming up over the next, 36 to 48 hours, just to, see who signs early and who doesn't.
Yeah, it's kind of surprising to me that a kid would want like Malone. I mean, what's the advantage to him waiting to February to make a decision or to sign? It's not like he can take visits and see a bunch of people. So what's the advantage for him there?
Well, you could go visit places in January on your own dime. So if he knows this is a factor, Tennessee's a factor, and I don't know who else might be a real factor for him. You could make a southern swing a matter of 4 or 5, 6 days and go see 3 schools, just kind of get a feel for them.
Yeah, I mean, are you really going to learn anything
walking
around in February? Are you going to learn anything walking around a college campus in January in the cold by yourself?
Here's what I know. You go drive around Knoxville, get a feel for it. You go drive around Oxford, Mississippi, get a feel for it. And there's no knock on Oxford, but I mean, if you're a kid from up north, what maybe jives better? Knoxville's going to be, fairly bigger than most people think, and when it comes to recruiting visits, and Oxford's a small little town. Like you may show up and go, man, I love this little small town, or man, this is in the middle of nowhere. I'm not going there. Like you're right. I mean, what can you learn? But I think that when you've not really been anywhere, you can at least kind of get a feel for, okay, this is where I potentially could be going if I choose Ole Miss, or this could be where I'm going if I choose Tennessee. Right now, outside of getting on Google Earth and, dropping a pin somewhere, I mean, how does he get a real feel for any of this stuff?
A fair point, and a good point. I hadn't thought about it that way. I think about it more from the standpoint of interacting with coaches and that type of thing. But you make a good point. If you've never seen the town, can you see yourself living there? That type of thing. So that there's a valid point to that. I still think most people are going to sign on Wednesday.
Well, I 100% agree. I do think there'll be a few guys that hold out. And especially if you're if you're looking at Auburn and, they make what any of those kids that are committed to Auburn, how does it benefit you to sign Wednesday? To me, it doesn't.
Yeah.
Because Auburn's going to have plenty of spots come February anyway. So,
and it's interesting too. You wonder, Rob, if some schools and thoughts are, for always before, you got to get out in front because of saving a recruiting class and all those things, is the notion now you don't have to, it's not as much about saving the recruiting class because of the transfer options that are out there. Because, I mean, hundreds of kids are pouring into the portal. It's huge numbers every day of kids jumping into the portal. Do ADs, administrators, people think, hey, we can we can salvage a recruiting year through the transfer portal and be okay, as opposed to years ago in the last few years where you're like, you better make that move and at Thanksgiving and, hope that you got 2.5 weeks to salvage the class of who you want and put a class together in a hurry, the way Jeremy Pruitt tried to 3 years ago.
Yeah, I think you make a really good point there, that does make an impact. Now, I think the reason for, moving early is not so much about recruiting. It's about, starting your search while the pool of candidates is, before some of them have started coming off the board and going other places. And, in Tennessee's case, I don't know that any of the hires that we've seen so far would have been guys that, that were really, high on their board to begin with.
Yeah, that's true. Transfer portal. Who's going to be more disappointed with the transfer portal? Coaches or the players going in the transfer portal?
I think the players going in the portal.
Not the top shelf guys.
Your top shelf guys, 100%, are going to go and be fine. But, some of these guys, I think are going to be in for a rude awakening when it comes to finding a new football home. I think the guy, I think a guy like Butch Jones at Arkansas State stands to benefit with some of these players that think they're going to find this great, oasis of places that want them, and then they don't. And then a place like Arkansas State has a chance to load up on something. Like, you don't think Brandon Johnson, isn't a perfect candidate to end up at Arkansas State? I mean, I do, but I think there's several other players that are not involved with Tennessee that, could end up at places like that. Not necessarily just at Arkansas State, but that level.
I agree. I think you make a really good point there. Those are, those like not mid majors like they are in basketball, but those lower tier schools, MAC schools, Sun Belt, the American Athletic Conference. I think you're going to see a lot of those teams benefit from this. And somebody like Brandon Johnson is probably not thinking about Arkansas State right now, and I'm not saying that that's where he's going to end up, but I think you're going to see a lot of kids, just like AP said, think they're going to make a lateral move from one Power 5 program to another, and that opportunity just ain't going to be there.
Another recruiting question for you guys. What do you think is more challenging for coaches right now? Trying to land a recruit or trying to recruit your current guys to stay?
Recruit your current guys to stay because they know what is going on in the program. I mean, recruits don't always know. I mean, they sometimes think they do, and I'm not talking about just Tennessee here. I'm talking about
I mean, it's a big picture question. It's not just a Tennessee question. It's an overarching recruiting question. Austin, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, again, like that's what I said about JT Shrout. Like JT Shrout, he's got the girlfriend on the softball team. Maybe he sticks around, maybe he doesn't. But if you're JT Shrout, do you have any faith that you would actually get a fair look in spring of 2021?
Yeah, when you got. You know what you're going against in Harrison Bailey, and then you got Caden Salter coming in. I wonder if, kind of to that same point, Hupper, with the transfer rule coming into effect, does it put pressure on coaches to play young guys earlier than they normally would, even if it's just, a taste here and there?
I think you have to. I mean, because look, you recruited them by selling them. They were going to play early, right? I mean, isn't that the question everybody asks? I mean, how many kids in a home, are on a Zoom call now because you can't go into a home? How many of them go, Coach, I really want a red shirt. I want to sit and watch and learn. How many people do that versus these kids want to know, hey, Coach, A, can I have this number? And B, how quick am I, I want to play from day one. My expectation, goal, is to play from day one. So yeah, I mean, I think with kids wanting to jump around the way they are, I think you absolutely have to play, and I think that's why coaches around the country right now are having a hard time with some of the kids because they didn't play a full schedule, and they didn't play against non-conference opponents where they could go out and beat up on whoever and get all those kids on the field and let them play a little bit. And let them, settle down and see where they are. I mean, there's a lot of kids around the country who feel like they just haven't been given an opportunity, and they were promised an opportunity. And I think the culture that we're in right now, a lot of those kids' ideas are just, hey, pack up and go somewhere else, go to the next spot. I mean, let's look at the quarterback at Duke, Chase Bryce, right? He doesn't win the job at Clemson. Okay, so I mean, Trevor Lawrence is better, so Trevor Lawrence takes the job at Clemson. He goes to Duke. He plays this year at Duke as a starter. It doesn't go very well. Duke's not very good. He's back in the transfer portal again, looking to start somewhere else next year. Going to jump to another one. I mean, the guy's going to try to be, a starter at 2 different schools back-to-back years and be at 3 schools in 3 years.
Because that's the current model.
Right. I think that's just kind of where everybody's at right now, which makes recruiting, really challenging and really hard because, always before it was about, you got to de-recruit them when they get to campus. Well, you got to de-recruit them, and then you may have to re-recruit them, 3 or 4 months later at the end of the year when the guy's talking about leaving on you. So I think that part of it's going to be.
I don't
really
think
hard.
you can de-recruit them anymore, Brent.
Really?
I don't. I think you almost have to just continue the whole loving up process the whole time they're there. Again, Tennessee's got several guys that I think that would be best served to be moved on. Brian Maurer's one of them. He knows what he's doing when he tweets this crap, and leads the fans on, and it's Maurer leaving. I mean, where is he in LA? I mean, where's he at? I mean, he knows what he's doing. And so many of these guys, it's not just him. Some of these guys know exactly what they're doing. They want, to feel the love from the fans, because ultimately so many of these guys care more about, getting a little bit of Twitter love or Instagram love than they do actually putting in time to work to be good on the field.
All right, let's jump to hoops right quick. Tennessee gets the win over Cincinnati. Rob, they've won 2 kind of slugfest, and on the defensive end of the floor. Are you more impressed with the 2 wins in the way that they have won those games, as opposed to had those been 98-94 shootouts where they had to outscore somebody to win the game?
Oh, I'm impressed with them just because of the obstacles they faced with, having 4 games canceled. Both Cincinnati and Colorado had already been playing. Tennessee had to push the pause button for 11 days. So not only missed those 4 games, missed some valuable practice time, only had 2 days to get ready for Colorado. I'm really impressed with the defense. Really impressed. They won a game on Saturday. I don't think Cincinnati's great by any means, but they won a game on Saturday against a quality opponent where they shot 32%. They won by 9. That's that's pretty stout to be playing at that level on defense this early in the season. And I really don't have a lot of concerns about the offense. They've been ugly through the 2 games. Offense is all about chemistry, continuity, and I think you'll see them get a lot better on that end of the floor.
Much better on the board Saturday against Cincinnati. Obviously, it was a huge point of emphasis. Or was that Cincinnati's not real good on the boards, and Tennessee took advantage of that?
I think there's probably a little bit of that, but I also think that after the head coach was not happy after the Colorado game with the rebounding effort. So I'm not surprised that they got better there. But Tennessee out-rebounded by 13. So I don't think it wasn't just all about Cincinnati. I think it had a lot to do with the point of emphasis. But I think that's going to be something to watch all season long. Volquest is not a great rebounder. Yves Pons is not a great rebounder. They both do some other things really, really well. But I wouldn't say that either one of them are plus rebounders. I think Anasicki can really help you there. He just has a knack for it. You can just tell. He's got 7 rebounds and they're all offensive right now. He just knows how to carve out space, kind of, has a good feel for where the ball's going to go. And I think Tennessee's wings are really good rebounders. I think Josiah, I think that's a strength. I think Keon absolutely can hit the boards, and Jaden is a good rebounder for a guard. And Tennessee's going to need those guys to help. Because like I said, I don't think their bigs are great rebounders.
Busy week for Tennessee as the conference schedule looms, pretty quickly here. What's got to be Rick Barnes' focal point with this team over this next stretch of 2 or 3 games they've got coming up?
To me, it's a great opportunity to really accelerate the development of Keon and Jaden. And I think coaches got to get comfortable trusting those guys, playing those guys, because I've seen enough that those 2 guys need to be getting more minutes. Jaden got 28 minutes on Saturday. Keon got 20. I think 28 is good for Jaden. I think Keon needs to get more than 20. I think Keon might be the best player of the team.
Why do you think he's not gotten more minutes?
I think the turnovers are bothering Rick. He's got 7. He's played 33 minutes. He's got 7 turnovers. That's bothering his head coach. I think the caliber of competition they're getting ready to play with these next 4 games, I think you got to live with it, let him play through that, so that so that he develops and hopefully he gets better at that. I'll tell you what was telling for me in these first 2 games is how good those 2 kids are on defense. I mean, you don't see that a lot from freshmen. And both of them, when they checked in their first college game of their career, Rick had no problem putting them on Colorado's best player, McKinley Wright. I mean, didn't try to hide him. I mean, threw him out there, and they are both high level on that end of the floor.
Is that the most impressive thing about this team to this point? Is their ability to guard the ball?
Oh yeah, I mean, they're so much
compared to a year ago.
Yeah, they're so much better. And it's not. I mean, they're so long, and it's not just length. I mean, Keon is explosive. I mean, great lateral quickness. Jaden, same thing, and Jaden's strong. I mean, Jaden can body you up. A lot of guards, even upper. That's a big problem for a lot of freshmen. Is getting pushed around. Jaden's not going to get pushed around by any opposing guards. Josiah is a physical specimen, and underrated. But Santiago, I don't think is the liability he was a year ago. I think his quickness is better. He's in much better shape, and I just has a much better understanding of what it's like to play defense at this level. I mean, perimeter wise, I think could be elite in getting out, extending people, and pressuring the ball.
Final hopes question, then we'll tie it all in and wrap it up a little bit with some SEC chatter. But are you worried about this team's outside shooting? I know you said you thought they would score and the offense would come around. They haven't exactly stroked it from the perimeter to this point. Are you worried about this team's ability to shoot from outside? Teams packing in a zone and daring them to beat them from the perimeter?
I think that'll get better. I mean, Santi, I think is a great shooter, or has the potential to be a great shooter. Josiah he showed last year that he shot around 40% from 3. I mean, he's not going to take 6 or 7 a game, but he can knock down open jumpers. Jaden has shown that he can shoot. He hit a couple the other night, and Keon is a better shooter than he has shown so far. So I just think that'll get better. I mean, I could end up being wrong. Bailey, can knock him down. Tennessee's not going to shoot 38%, 39% from 3, but I think they can be around 34, 35, which with everything else they do will be solid.
Well, and Tennessee's poised to, and looks like they're them and Missouri best 2 teams in the conference.
Early on, yes.
Kentucky's got issues.
Kentucky has big time chemistry issues. Now they'll get better. They always do. But I wonder about that team's chemistry. I really do.
Yeah,
I really do. And I think Alabama will come along too.
Got you. Missouri surprised you out of the gate?
Oh yeah, very much.
Nobody really saw that one coming, did they?
Well, I mean, I'm just going on the Illinois game right now, and I watched some of the Illinois Duke game last week, and just felt like Illinois was pretty darn good, and didn't. I mean, I think Missouri's solid. They got some guys back. I mean, they're veteran. I'm sure they're tough. Given their head coach and will defend you. But I thought Illinois was pretty darn good, and so I think that's a great win for Missouri.
All right, so let's wrap this thing up with a little bit of SEC talk here. How surprised were you that Auburn made the move on Gus? And I mean, do we think that Auburn may end up promoting Kevin Steele on this thing, and that's where they end up with, and that's how they end this thing up with a head coaching replacement?
I think it's certainly possible. I think that he's got a lot of the money backers down there in his corner, and so when you factor in Kevin, you factor in Rodney Garner, who I think would have been a great choice. If a new coach came in and didn't retain Rodney for Jeremy's defensive line coach, but I think he's most likely to end up staying at Auburn. To me, it makes sense from kind of keeping the cohesion, but this doesn't make any sense to me from a standpoint of you move on from a guy, you pay him $21 million, and you're just going to promote a guy that, again, doesn't have a great track record. That's not saying he can't be a really good coach the second time around. There are plenty of guys that failed as first-time coaches figured it out the second time around. I think he is way better now than he was in his first stint many moons ago. So, it just there's no sexy hire for Auburn if they hire Kevin Steele, promote Kevin Steele, though.
They're certainly not. And surprised, Rob, that you're not. I mean, it doesn't seem like Hugh Freeze is going to be a factor there at all. Maybe that's because the NCAA is already on their campus, thanks to Bruce Pearl. I don't know, but it doesn't seem like he's going to be a factor. And then, Mario Cristobal's got a big buyout at Oregon. We'll see who else they interview. Auburn's got to interview some people. They can't I don't think they can just come to the table with Kevin Steele in the next 24 hours. I think they have to interview some people. But, I think that one's interesting because I don't know that there's all these hotshot names floating around out there, which probably disappoints some Auburn fans. And it doesn't sound like Auburn was necessarily the most organized team or the most organized group of people when they made this move.
I'm always surprised just from the money standpoint. I mean, just writing that check this year when programs are losing so much money, and it's not like you can spread it out. What is it? Half has got to be paid within 30 days.
11 within 30 days.
That's what surprised me. Auburn has been unhappy with him forever. Just the amount of money involved.
I think they looked at it, Rob, and they've been. You're right. They've been after him forever, and every year he kind of was a Rod Delmonico. He do just enough to stick around, or right before they were getting ready to fire him, he'd beat Alabama and beat Georgia and make the year 6, and then go right back in the tank and have these head scratching swings. But I mean, I think you look at them this year; they were 6-4, and easily could have been 4-6 had the refs not screwed up the Arkansas game and the Ole Miss game. And so I just go back to, they weren't as good as I think they thought they would be down at Auburn. And they took this opportunity to say, see ya.
And he didn't have a strong recruiting class to point to either.
No, he did not.
Helps on the way.
Yep, you're certainly right. They had not lit it up in the recruiting world during this odd year of recruiting for sure. Finally, your thoughts on the shoe toss. How SEC is that, right, Rob?
I mean, I was just amazing that happened, that Florida lost a game because of that. And deservedly so. I mean, that's just, I would, if I was that kid's teammates, I don't know how I would handle it. I'd be furious. So
now Florida out of the playoff goes and tries to spoil Alabama's party, which I think we all agree that's probably not going to happen at this point in time on Saturday night. Georgia's season is done as Vanderbilt will not play. So a very light week of conference games coming up this week, Tennessee, Texas A&M. And the SEC.
Truth be told, I don't know if they really wanted to play Tennessee. But I think once they went down the road so far, there was no getting out of it without some kind of retribution from the league office.
Yeah, I think once they promised the league early in the week they would play, and so the league did not shuffle the Ole Miss stuff around for Texas A&M. I think you're right there, Austin. I think that they were like, oh, you have to play because you told the league you were going to play. Because
the league could have easily moved the A&M game to last weekend, in which Tennessee doesn't play Vanderbilt this weekend, and my streak's still intact, Hubs. Instead, it will come to an end Saturday.
Yeah, it will come to an end on Saturday. You're exactly right. Austin's going to head to Disneyland or Disney World, excuse me, and hang out with the fine folks in Orlando. Rob and I will do our best to hold down the fort here at the end of the week and cover a little basketball and cover Tennessee football coming up this weekend as the Vols take on Texas A&M. We'll have our mailbag podcast on Thursday where we take your questions and answer your questions. And we have plenty of coverage of football, plenty of coverage of recruiting, obviously with signing day, and plenty of coverage of basketball as well. That's all throughout the week at Volquest.com. That's going to do it for this edition of the Blue Water Climate Control Volquest.com Tuesday podcast for Austin Price and Rob Lewis. I'm Brent Hubbs. Thanks for joining us. Have a great rest of your Tuesday, everybody.